Hi, so I'm Toby Lewis of Novum Insights. Asked to give a quick presentation on what we're seeing in the Stacks ecosystem. So Novum, we're an analytics business. We've been in the crypto DeFi space for about 6 years. Came into the Stacks ecosystem about a year ago on the accelerator here. Essentially, sort of super bullish on this ecosystem. We built a data tool, scanning all of the blocks in Stacks. We're rolling it out, looking at every single DEX, every single NFT marketplace. And as a company, basically, we look at different DeFi protocols and try to get really behind the data and find interesting investment trends. So this is a broad overview of the Stacks ecosystem. Super cool what's been going on, especially as when we got here a year ago, it was really, really interesting because we were a data company and there wasn't that much new activity to track. And this is just a cross-section of some of the companies looking at sort of wallets or analytics or DeFi tools. And I think it's really, really early, but it's pretty impressive how quickly things are being built on Stacks and being assembled almost in real time. Probably the two biggest DeFi exchanges, first came Arcadico. It's had a relatively decent growth in TVL. We've got the StackSwap people here as well. And then we're seeing Alex begin to scale and quite quickly become the biggest sort of DeFi protocol on Stacks, DeFi exchange on Stacks. You've got many cool products. I think probably pretty much everyone in this room has the Hero wallet. Great interface, sort of easy sort of outlet into Stacks. We're seeing a number of sort of new use cases, the sort of blogging platform, Sigil, Boom, allowing for stacking NFTs, which is pretty cool, just in terms of being able to earn yield in Bitcoin, I think is one of the things that's brought a lot of us to the Stacks ecosystem. It's kind of what better use case for anything you're doing in DeFi than being able to earn yield on Bitcoin? And I haven't seen many other projects do that for NFTs. So super cool. I'd like to try out that platform. Citycoins, obviously, I think is probably, besides being able to stack Stacks to earn Bitcoin, arguably Citycoins is one of the things that really makes Stacks a unique place. We're in Miami. Miami Coin was the first city coin. You've had New York Coin, a few other minor coins, but the super cool, the DeFi protocol is engaging with city governments and those kind of things. And it's kind of, I guess, what we're all here to do, bring crypto out into the real world. You've got other products like Block Survey, super cool. I signed up and bought a Crash Punks t-shirt before coming here on Block Survey. It seems very clean, seems to work well. They were on our accelerator. We've got the founder of Zest here with us today, as well as Brad from Sustainable Bitcoin Standard. You've got the likes of Rider, a new product also by people core to the Stacks ecosystem. And then it's nice to see businesses like Moonray raising proper venture rounds on Stacks as not sort of core Stacks team coming in, raising $3.5 million. A lot of the other major projects have been coming out. But that's just a brief overview put together by our analysts. But we've got a Stacks Dataverse that we're going to be scaling. And now going to dive into the panel and sort of talk strategies on Stacks, basically. So, cool. So Brad, You're with Sustainable Bitcoin Standard. How's it going?
I am, yeah, it's going super well. So it's been a really amazing process to build, and in particular build on Stacks and be a part of the Stacks Accelerator first cohort. I think that helped give us the momentum that has accelerated us to where we are today. Where we are today is we are building an institutional grade protocol that will allow for institutional investors that want to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet to add proof of sustainable mining to their Bitcoin holdings without compromising the fungibility of Bitcoin in any way. And so our mission as an organization is to help Bitcoin become our planet's most sustainable asset class.
Amazing. And I'd agree, like we've just been hearing from Trevor and Kyle at the Stacks Accelerator. I think they've done phenomenal things for Stacks. Like we were on the first cohort of around 20 companies. Everyone was building, super focused, and learned a lot from each other. So it was super cool. And what was really nice about it is there wasn't a DEX on Stacks. There wasn't an NFT marketplace when we arrived. And all of those things were built by entrepreneurs and people in the cohort. So super exciting how fast this space is moving, because in 6 months, it's sometimes like it takes a degree of suspension of disbelief to believe that those things will build out in real time. We've also got Tycho from Zest, which is likely to be another new super big player in the ecosystem, helping people earn yield on Bitcoin. So Tycho.
Yeah, no, that's right. So yeah, hi everybody. My name is Tycho. I'm a general manager at Trust Machines, which is this new, very exciting company in the Stacks ecosystem that's basically going to incubate a lot of protocols. With $150 million in fresh cash to do so, and one of the protocol that I'm leading the incubation of is Zest protocol, which will be an under-collateralized Bitcoin lending application. So for those of you who might be familiar with Maple Finance on Ethereum, think that with native Bitcoin. Right, because the challenge that we've seen so far that with DeFi has been that all loans needed to be over-collateralized, and that's not what institutions want. That's not what institutions do. They borrow under-collateralized, or in many cases uncollateralized. Yeah, we see a big use case for institutions to onboard onto Stacks and because they're already so familiar with Bitcoin. So that's exactly what we're doing, and yeah, where we see a big future for Stacks in the institutional space.
And on our panel, we also have Rodolfo from Foundation Capital. You were a very early investor in Stacks, so quite a good deal. Would love to sort of hear about why you're bullish in this ecosystem.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So it's my second panel of the day. I think in this one I'll share a little bit more context on when we first met Muniv back in 2016. It was a super interesting conversation when they were talking about this alternative internet and talking about how the current internet had been too centralized. And once you put two and two together, which was that you could start moving value natively along with information, it could be very promising. Fast forward to a year later, we participated in the first token sale within Foundation as one of the first institutional investors into that round, and have been collaborating with the team ever since. And a couple of years ago, when the team started thinking about forming a foundation, I got honored to be invited to be part of it, and so been working with Brittany and the team to set up the governance structures for the foundation. And then now that all of that stuff is in place after a few sessions and a couple of years in, we're now moving into how do we keep pushing the ecosystem forward within the purview of the foundation. And so as part of that work, a lot of what I'm personally passionate about and interested in doing is how do we create conditions for more developers, more teams to come and build on top of Stacks and start taking advantage of the nascent ecosystem and tools that are emerging, both now with Trust Machines and then prior Hero, but then with the bridges from other networks and then like the wrap tokens and so on. And for me, one of the parts that I'm most excited about is when you start seeing the potential of, say, collaboration between Lightning networks and Stacks or other pieces of the ecosystem, and then starting to build workflows around that to create things that are going to be unique to what Stacks can build. And so that's why I'm super excited and grateful to be here with you guys.
Yeah, and it's amazing, yeah, to watch that evolution, and it must have been very exciting for you. Obviously, Brad, you're a pretty unique company in the crypto space and in Stacks. Kind of, let's dive in and unpack a bit more how Sustainable Bitcoin Standard works, and I guess as a strategy, like, in some ways, you're solving one of the big problems of our space. How do we ensure that Bitcoin is as positive for the planet as it can be positive for society, which like, I think the latter is without doubt, but the former is certainly a controversial topic. So how are you fixing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the question. I think first and foremost, as someone who's spent my entire career in sustainability, I don't think Bitcoin has necessarily a problem per se. I think the proof of work is actually inherently pretty beautiful. But what I think is really important is that Bitcoin mining is really focused on using renewable energy and doing so within the confines of the existing renewable energy system. Using RECs and the system like this that the Apples and Googles and Metas of the world are currently using. And so specifically to what we're building, we are building a protocol that financially rewards Bitcoin miners who are using verified renewable energy sources. And it financially rewards them by issuing them what we call a sustainable Bitcoin certificate for each Bitcoin that they've mined after they've gone through our verification. From that point on, they can sell that SBC, which is built on Stacks, to an institutional investor who can couple it with their Bitcoin holdings. So our token is effectively what we consider proof of sustainable mining. Now, one of the sort of key design attributes from day one has been, how do you design a system like this that protects fungibility of Bitcoin? And so that's what we've done. We've sort of created an extension of the existing system, the REC market, or renewable energy certificate market, and we're building it on into the Bitcoin world. It's going very, very well, actually. We've got more and more miners who are recognizing the value that we bring to them. We think that we can add around 5% to the bottom line of a miner, contingent on the current price of Bitcoin and other variables. But more and more miners are joining the protocol, and we have a lot of institutional investors, particularly those with ESG mandates, that are really keen to get into the Bitcoin space, but have these concerns around Bitcoin's energy use. So, really we're trying to create that bridge between Bitcoin miners who are doing sort of the right thing and using clean energy sources, and these ESG investors who want to get in the space. We always have felt like Stacks is the right place to build a protocol of this nature, which is really intended to support Bitcoin on Bitcoin's journey to what I think is going to be one day thought of as one of the most sustainable asset classes in the world. I'm positive that it will be. It just needs to become, primarily powered by these clean energy sources.
Yeah, and from our sister fund, we ended up investing in a Bitcoin mining company. It was super interesting for us that they, I think, were 45% renewable when we got involved, and they're now at like 65. So it's kind of like, I think the way I often think of Bitcoin in the positive light is it's a financing mechanism for the renewable grid in a way, right? So And Tycho, I think this is a neat segue into what you're building in Zest, right? Because Brad, in one way, I think, is fixing and helping tease out some of the properties of Bitcoin to make it more useful. Zest, at the same time, I think, like, there's a lot of Bitcoin in the world that is just sitting there, right? And any financial asset you should have a yield on. So what's the...
That's exactly what we're going after, right?
Yeah.
It's we're in the end trying to build like the best decentralized Bitcoin yield product out there, right? And you do that on stacks, right? Because we have Clarity, and Clarity has read access to Bitcoin state, right? So we can know where the Bitcoin is. We can know when it's been lent out, when it's been transferred. Bitcoin can just stay Bitcoin. It's just a Bitcoin transaction. But it just becomes a loan because we compute it as a loan, right, in a Clarity smart contract. And that's kind of the beauty of this as well, right? Like that I think stacks will have a lot of powerful fit with the institutional world, right? Because institutions, they have Bitcoin, right? Like institutions, or most big institutions, they don't have Solana or Avalanche, right? And they'll be looking at some point to earn a yield on this Bitcoin, right? And money managers will at some point also have a fiduciary duty to go out there and earn a yield on all of this Bitcoin. So Michael Saylor, and if he's listening to this, like we're coming for your Bitcoin, right? It's quite obvious. And when you talk to these funds, right, like when you talk to someone who has, say, $1 billion plus in Bitcoin on their balance sheets, they can't like go and wrap all of that and use it on Solana or on Ethereum, right? Because that's just way too much risk. Like maybe they could wrap 5% or 10%, but they need to look for native Bitcoin yield opportunities. And those are very hard to find, and you'd either have to trust the counterparty, stacks can be the big layer to enable all of this exciting institutional activity, right? And we see it here too, like in the room. There's actually a bunch of guys that just rocked up today from the Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund, right? They're here, right? They're interested in crypto. They're just looking into doing stuff, and they come to the Stacks conference just ahead of Bitcoin 22, right? And so these are the kind of people that will be getting the ecosystem much more. Like I can just see the tip of the iceberg, but it's happening.
Tycho and I are just trying to bring in the institutional players en masse. We're tag teaming it, and eventually, when all these institutional players flood into Bitcoin, we'll give a little nod and say you're welcome.
Yeah, no, it's and I was actually thinking this was for Rodolfo. It's like you as an investor have the luxury of looking at lots of different ecosystems and seeing lots of projects scale out. Stacks, obviously, as a protocol and as an idea for people stacking stacks to earn Bitcoin and doing lots of cool things linked to Bitcoin, it's really interesting, right? But when do we see the $1 billion TVL, $1 billion volume marketplaces for NFTs or whatever it is? What do the builders on Stacks and what does the Stacks ecosystem need to do to make us as big as we all know it can be?
Yeah, I think right now I'm seeing a couple of trends. One is if you think of different networks as their own countries, right now there's a trend for different teams building what has been successful in another network and bringing it to their own network, right? So other layer ones are seeing NFT marketplaces. They're seeing financial primitives like derivatives, lending, and so on. And they're seeing whether that also gets traction in their respective ecosystem, right? You have certainly EVM compatible chains, and that's one trend, and then you have other non-EVM compatible chains. I would put Stacks kind of like somewhere there at the moment, where you have a number of teams that are just seeing what's happening in certain ecosystems and trying to bring it into Stacks and so on. And that's fine. I think that's cool, and it's a need that is existent in the market, because once you have the financial primitives into the ecosystem getting some liquidity, then people can it's all open source, so they can start using those tools and then developing on top of that different layers of the stack and different applications. What I'm personally most excited about are opportunities that are unique to stacks, right? Like this notion of stacking stacks and earning yield in Bitcoin, I think is extremely powerful. And I'm personally excited about Arcadico in that sense, that this notion of you can just put your stacks, get a loan, and get it self-repaid over time, and you don't have to do anything about it. If you start combining that with other tools in that toolkit, that's where you're going to start seeing developers coming specifically for stacks and building on top of that, and then incubating projects that can go from there. That's the second piece. The third one is within the foundation, part of the work that we're doing is how do we increase the acceptance of stacks across the ecosystem? So like wallet support, exchange support, and so on, because like we definitely need to catch up in terms of on-ramp and off-ramp availability, just the geographical distribution of the ecosystem and so on. And so we're definitely working hard on that front as well, so that again, it's easier for anybody to get access to stacks and then just let their imagination run wild and just build new things.
Yeah. No, maybe to really jump in there, but I think that's really important what you said, right? Build stuff that you can only build on stacks, right? Like, we don't want, like, I don't think it would make a lot of sense for, stacks to just be another layer one, right? Where you have, all the things we already have in other places, right? You have this unique thing, which is read access to Bitcoin state. You can basically see the block headers, and with that, you can do some really exciting stuff, which, combines stacks and Bitcoin. But, when we talk to possible parties or, like institutional lenders, institutional borrowers to work with, like, we don't even need to mention stacks, right? We just say, this is native Bitcoin lending borrowing. We do it through smart contracts, they are Clarity smart contracts on stacks secured by Bitcoin, but often people don't really care, right? And so yeah, if we go after those, that kind of audience, right, and we build those kind of applications, I think we'll be very successful.
Yeah, no, and 100% a trend I'm seeing a lot when I chat with stacks companies is like they're a Bitcoin company powered by stacks and with a element of where one thing that I'd love to get your feedback on, Tycho, from a technical perspective is obviously we've got like Lightning integration being worked on by like LN Swap, and we've got sort of attempts to reach out, wrap Bitcoins, whatever. Like how does that reach scale, the on-off ramp between the Bitcoin network and stacks, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of exciting, I suppose, developments happening there that will probably likely be announced very soon. So I won't spill the beans. But yeah, I think in the end, like the problem that sort of these networks, right, like say a Liquid or an RSK or anyone who's been trying to build something, with Bitcoin, is that you can very easily peg in, right? You can transfer Bitcoin to someone can issue a token against that Bitcoin. But how do you then peg out, right? How do you get your Bitcoin back? Right, and that's also like that's the big challenge. But we believe it can be solved through this idea of read access to Bitcoin state. Right, we know where the Bitcoin is, and then you can have like creative ways to go back the other way. Right, so currently how you can do this on stacks is like with XBTC. Right, so this is like wrap Bitcoin on stacks, and then there's this thing called Magic Bridge coming where you can trustlessly swap your BTC for XBTC, right, in a non-custodial way. So that's like a beginning, right? But I think, stacks, there will be a lot of different experiments that can go much further than anything that's been tried before in this sort of pegging BTC in, pegging BTC out, just because we've got this unique piece, which is read access to Bitcoin state. But I feel not qualified myself to talk about those things. You've in the Q&A, maybe if Jude is on here or Marvin, you've got to ask them. And they'll be able to tell you much more about this stuff.
100%. And on that note, we're coming towards the 5-minute mark for the presentation. So if anyone does have any questions, shoot your hand up and we'll come to you. In the meantime as well, essentially I'd love to, like I asked you when prepping this panel, sort of what does Stacks as an ecosystem look like 5 years from now? What's the end game, Brad?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, you know, obviously our product and what we're building, at least at this stage, is just institutional grade product. I mean, we're building a bridge for institutional investors, you know, that have ESG mandates to be able to add Bitcoin to their balance sheet. And so I think, you know, by building on Stacks, and from the seat that I'm sitting in today, I think 5 years from now, Stacks will be a commonplace, you know, protocol that institutional investors are using, you know, for sort of, you know, in order to have sort of ancillary services that are in and around the Bitcoin, you know, ecosystem, you know, like ours. So I think that we're going to see a lot of institutional players using it and be very comfortable with it in the coming years. I'd say probably similar, you know, to where they are with ETH today, you know, but this is specific to Bitcoin, which, you know, is much more important for institutional investors at this point.
100%. We have a question at the back here.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm curious of what your opinion on stablecoins coming to the Stacks network. A lot of us want to do certain projects of bridging gaps, and a lot of the volatility is really holding us back from that. So I'd love to get your opinion in the future of stablecoins.
I'd be happy to pick up on that. Yeah, like I mean, obviously we have, you know, currently today we have actually we have two stablecoins, but one is USDA, right, which is crypto collateralized by Arcadico. But yeah, the problem there has been that the peg has not been as stable, right? A stablecoin is not a stablecoin if it's, you know, not worth $1. So now there's this new thing coming to Stacks called XUSD, which is basically wrapped USDC as a second stablecoin. You can create a pair between the two, and basically you'll have a very, very stable base to build on. Now, there's also lots of exciting things happening, you know, in talks with other issuers of stablecoins. I mean, some things have been announced there, some things haven't. I mean, you know, Circle is one big one, but, you know, you can trust that, well, at Trust Machines and at other places where we're pushing hard for all the big players to come to Stacks, and they're very interested. So it's coming.
And having been in crypto since before DAI and Tether and things came out, like I think the moment Stacks cracks stable coins, it just gives that solidity for people to be able to trade in and out.
Right.
And until the ecosystem doesn't have that, it's like in a market downturn, you just get wiped out and you've got nowhere to hide.
And stablecoins are coming to Bitcoin too, right? I mean, you saw probably all the stuff with the Luna Foundation Guard, right? Basically backing Terra with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right? Now they're currently doing this with big OTC deals, right? They're going to a big exchange. They're buying Bitcoin there to back it. But, you know, the beauty of doing such a thing on Stacks at some point would be that you just can raise it directly from the community in a decentralized way, right? You can read if the Bitcoin has come in, and you can issue something against it. So yeah, so I think those things will be they're natural to come to Stacks.
Yeah, and I was with the BCB guys the other day, and they were talking about their BStable project, which is a stable coin backed by Bitcoin, which I thought was really cool as well. Like literally, it was like they had euros, dollars, pounds, and Bitcoin behind it as the concept, right? So like the Bitcoin standard rather than the gold standard. So a lot of cool stuff is going to be done, I'm sure. Were there any other questions or that? No? So in terms of Tycho, where does Stacks go 5 minutes from now?
I mean, I think five years from now, probably a lot of people will be using Stacks without even knowing, right?
Yeah.
I think that's in the end the end game, right? People are just doing stuff with their Bitcoin, right? Currently, they can only hold it. You know, then they can, you know, manage their risk. They can do DeFi, they can do NFTs and so on. But they will think of it as Bitcoin DeFi and Bitcoin NFTs. And yeah, I hope that, you know, the faster Stacks can, you know, scale back and not be in the picture at all, then we have succeeded.
Yeah, amazing. And Rodolfo, as a final sum up, where are we ending?
I mean, in my hope is that more developers get excited to try the native capabilities of Stacks. I think today, when you look at the liquidity of Bitcoin, just mostly sitting there, not doing much, it kind of doesn't help a lot of the newcomers into the space, which, ideologically they think like, yeah, I'll get some Bitcoin because XYZ, but what else can I do? And they have to go to other ecosystems to find that, both as developers and as holders and so on. And my hope is that a lot of the computational capabilities that blockchains enable can actually come and just actually thrive within the Bitcoin ecosystem, because it is the most distributed one. It's the OG, and it's the longest standing one. And it can really bring all kinds of opportunities, both economic, freedom-wise, and speech-wise, to people all over the world. And it can also be fun with NFTs. It can be fun with property rights and other pieces. And so my hope is that we can 10x or 20x the number of developers building natively in the ecosystem, and that, especially within the work that the foundation is doing, that we can create the conditions for the ecosystem to keep blooming as we're seeing more and more.
Amazing. So yeah, we're building out the $1 trillion Bitcoin ecosystem. Thanks, it's been a great panel, really enjoyable.
Fantastic. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.